All right, so welcome to today's podcast. I have two guests here from Lamor. Is it two? Is the R? Is it Lamor? Sounds like Spanish, doesn't it?
It depends which mood you're in.
Oh, it does.
Yes,
All right.
exactly.
So please introduce yourselves. Who I'm with.
I'm David Nazha. I've been with Lamor probably for around approaching 4 years now.
All right.
I have been working on the services side of the business, trying to grow that and managing that up until a few months ago, and now I'm working on special projects
Alright.
for the company. So stuff that is not necessarily related to the day-to-day, but it's for the longer-term, more strategic part of the company.
Okay. So do you live in Finland, or you're not Finnish? I can
Well,
tell.
actually, interestingly, I did a DNA test recently, and I was just telling Anssi in the car, I am 19.2% Finnish.
19. Oh, that's yeah.
Is that enough to get me a passport?
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
Okay, all right. Depends on how.
But you're from where? You're from
a mixed
UK?
background. A mixed background.
Mixed?
UK accent, Palestinian father, Greek mother, born in the States,
Alright.
and now living in Dubai.
All right. So you're just here
So-
for the business, so to speak.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, not for the weather.
Yeah. I guess nobody comes to Finland for at least this time of year.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, and then
Right, and I'm Anssi Mikola from a company called River Recycle.
Yep.
And we've been discussing this and working together on this River Recycle idea with Lamor for a little over a year now. And
All right.
then last week we finally joined forces and Lamor became a major shareholder in River Recycle.
yeah.
And we're working together to clean up the rivers of the world of the plastic that is going into the oceans.
All right, that sounds good.
And that's great business.
Yeah. So, how much time do you think it will take to clean up one river, or then all the rivers in the world?
Our guesstimation at the moment is that actually to clean up a river, meaning wiping the plastic out of it, that's a matter of maybe 6 months from when somebody says go ahead.
6 months, really?
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty quick stuff.
I thought you were gonna say like 3 decades or something.
It depends on how you look at it. To clean up a river, we're talking about the solid waste floating in a river.
Yeah.
Collecting that off is about 6 months. Then the sort of final solution we're looking for is to stop people from throwing plastic into the rivers in the first place.
And that's gonna take some time.
That's bound to take 15 to 30 years.
Yeah, I guess.
And to clean up all the rivers, we think we could technically do it in about 7 years.
Yeah.
And then it'll take whatever, 15 to 30 or 40 years before we can take the cleaners off the rivers, because there is no trash at all in the rivers. But we'll see whether I live to see that.
Yeah, we'll see. Do you what do you think? Is that worth of doing, or do you think people are gonna throw the waste there anyway?
I think they'll for the time being, people will throw the waste anyway. I think it's a case of dealing with it on a practical level, which is removing the immediate issues, which is the clogging up of our river systems and then the pollutants that are going into our food system.
Yeah.
But then it's a longer term educational side of things, which
Yeah.
is teaching the populations to stop it. So I think Anssi's answer about cleaning up the rivers will take total 7 years, assuming that there is no continuation of pollutions.
Yeah.
If it stopped today, this is what you could do. But the longer term thing is making sure that people are educationally aware, and
Yeah.
also that the infrastructure is in place. So some people, some areas of the world, they might be aware of these issues, but if they don't have the infrastructure, what are they supposed to do? They can't store the plastic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we were just discussing with David in the car that actually Finland was doing pretty much the same about 70 years ago.
70 years
Yeah,
ago.
oh no, actually in 1920s, so about 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Our toilet system was taking the stuff from the outhouses and actually pouring it more or less directly into the ocean. But the difference between then and now is that then it was organic because we hadn't invented plastic. Now it's the same waste management system that is not working in the developing countries, but the stuff that goes in is plastics because that's what we use at the moment.
Yeah.
And there's the slight difference of organics maybe taking 6 months to a year to dissolve,
Yeah.
and plastic taking 2.5 million years, maybe.
So it's just the waste is different.
Exactly. The waste
It's
is
the
just
same-
different.
same-
Human behavior is still the same.
Human behavior
Yeah.
is the same depending on your standard of living, on the sort of level of your economy.
So what do you think is the problem, so to speak? Is it just education that people don't really know what they're doing, or they just don't care?
They just don't have a choice. Having been walking around Indonesian, what I would see almost as a slum, it's probably called lower mid-level housing in local terms.
Yeah.
You have to walk for half an hour to find the first waste bin.
So that's the problem.
In reality, if you had to go out from your door and walk for half hour to be able to throw your trash somewhere, it's fairly likely that you could revert to the easier solution.
Yeah.
Because
yes.
having no place to put it, you got two choices. You can throw it in your front yard, you'll have rats and a horrible smell, or you can throw it over the back, which is the river or the riverbed. And then when the rains come, it disappears.
Yeah.
I also do think it's somewhat educational as well, or awareness, because I think for me, and maybe I'm more ignorant than the most in the West, I didn't know the correlation between plastic bottle being thrown in the ocean or ending up in the ocean, all the way coming down to our sushi, right, in terms of the microplastic. So it is also an element of, and I think that's why the West in particular are becoming aware of this stuff, because it's now affecting us. It's not affecting the rivers that we see on the news or the beaches that we go to in Thailand. It's also affecting us directly in the food that we eat. So I think I think it has to be a combination of the ability to give them an outlet to put the waste somewhere, but also the education. You can't just throw this stuff, because there is an overall effect.
So if we just say that the way people maybe don't want to hear it, but is it just now when it's our problem, we want to do something about it, so to speak? Is it that way, or? Because the way you just say it was like, now that we get in our sushi, then now we are.
If you want to be really cynical about it, then perhaps I mean, but that's just my point of view, because it is affecting us. Then we care about it. But 20 years ago, this problem still was there, but we didn't know about the effects on us.
Yeah.
And we just kind of said, oh well, that's just the third world as it was defined back then. Now we use better phrases like emerging markets to describe them, but I think it is really, it's how does this benefit me, or how does this impact me, is generally the driver for these types of things to
well, I guess that's the way it goes, because we have our own life, we think about how it's gonna affect me and so on, so we have to start from there, of course. And I think, like you said, the problem is probably not Finland. Probably it's not. So it's the emerging markets, like you said. It's the third world countries that are doing most of the pollution, right?
Yeah, and what I think that there's a chance for fantastic international cooperation, because all countries lack something. In Finland, we've been working on innovation and feeding the education system for so long that for the past 10 years we've been in the top 3 of the world's most innovative countries, which means that it's been a long time since we ran out of any real problems. So now what we have is, like somebody said from a university, thousands of fantastic solutions desperately looking for a problem. Whereas when you go to Indonesia or the Philippines, you have problems. For an engineer, it's like a dream come true, an actual real problem. Not a first world problem of, can I buy something from the net in a easier way? But rather a real problem.
And to your point you made about it's the emerging markets that are now polluting. Yes, but we've done our fair share in the West. We've all had our industrial revolutions. We've all had the times when we were throwing stuff in our river systems. We've just come to an evolved state through education and through economy, where we can now sit back and say, that's probably not the best way to do that. And coming into the CSR foundation type of thing.
Because you said that you're on the service side of Lamor, so tell us more about that.
Well, so I think what we want to do as Lamor is, as we've always done, in terms of our business models, is be practical. We don't want to sit there and talk to industry and blame them as them being the problem. that doesn't work. You can't go to a biggest plastics producer and say you're the big bad guy. You need to stop doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
You have so many special interests. You have so many people that are making a living from that. And likewise, we can't go to these emerging markets and say, don't have your industrial revolution when we're sitting in a very nice industrialized environment.
Mm-hmm.
What we need to do, and I think it's upon us, our responsibility, is to assist industry to be more sustainable and more ecologically friendly, to use a nice term, and to support emerging markets to do what we did, to allow their growth, but to do it in a more sustainable way. So using our inventors and our minds that we have with the education and the financial systems that we have here to be able to say, drive your car, but here's a better alternative.
Yeah.
You know, use your plastics, but here's a better way of dealing with it, rather than us sitting in the West and just lecturing these people. You can't convince any emerging market not to have their industrial revolution. The governments have to get their people employed, and that's the only way to do it. So for us in Lamor, it's about merging all of the aspects. Is to say that industry has to exist, emerging markets have to emerge, and we need to plug that gap in the middle is by putting everybody together and saying, well, what's the practical solution to this? And that's really the idea of the foundation eventually, and and getting involved in the corporate social responsibility programs.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Lamor is in a great place to help with all kinds of waste. Us being mostly focused on the plastics. Plastics as such is a wonderful invention. I mean, some places in Africa, they lose 30% of their food during transportation. Because the packaging, because lack of cold storage, lack of proper packaging in the food. So if you just take plastic off, and that means that we need to increase the global food production by 30% or 20% because the food gets wasted.
Yeah,
that's going to be worse for the world.
So it's not all bad.
No,
because now when we start discussion about plastics, it's always kind of a bad discussion.
That's the media narrative, and that's how you get people's attention. It's like in the oil industry. We've been involved in the oil industry for nearly 40 years. Spilling oil is a bad thing, yes, but if you actually look at it, oil is an organic material, so it's an evil necessity, or it's a necessary evil, whatever you want to put it. But cutting something out has detrimental effects. So this is going back to being practical, is that you have to use plastic, so use it in a better way. And I think Anssi's system, together with Lamor now, in terms of what he's talking about, is the perfect example of being practical and looking at things from all sides of things. Is how do you recover the waste? How do you recycle it? And then what's the positive output that you can come from that? In terms of what you can then do with the recovered plastic.
So you said that you're on some kind of foundation at Lamor. So what are you? Because the point. What is the point of companies to open their start doing foundation or become active with the CSR, you said? Yeah,
I think for us, we are still looking at the options in terms of whether we go down the full charitable foundation. But at the very start, what we are doing is getting more and more active within corporate social responsibility programs, CSR. And there's a few reasons to that. One, if you look at us as an organization, we have spent almost 40 years supporting our clients globally, and I think this is just another continuation in terms of supporting our clients. And how do we support our clients from a CSR perspective is that they have responsibilities on local societies and where they're active, where they are exploring for oil and gas. And at the moment, there are very few trustable or trustworthy, I should say, that was probably Finglish or Greeklish word, organizations that they can rely upon on a global scale to implement what they have promised to local governments, to then see that actually come into effect in local societies. So what we are aiming to do is provide that trustworthy organization to implement on that side of things.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of suspicious people. I think they just don't know where the money is going, or how is it used, or is it really going the way it should be.
Exactly. And we want to build off the fact that we have this almost 40-year history in the ecosystem that is the oil and gas industry. We do come from Finland, although I don't necessarily
Or
look like
19%
I
finish.
19.2%.
19, yeah.
From Tampere. I don't know if that is a good thing or a bad thing.
You have an
it
interesting
depends on
accent
who
if you're
asks.
from
But you know, we know that Finland is at the forefront of being clean and ethical, and I think, you know, we position ourselves as that organization that would assist the oil companies in it. And I think also it's having that I keep on using this term, this practical approach. I think it's more of a realistic approach. Is that historically, charity, CSR versus commercial operations, and they've always been at loggerheads and against each other, and that's not going to get us anywhere. The only way you get somewhere is by having both sides look at solutions and seeing how we can tackle these problems together. And I think we, as Lamor, have this ability to be that bridge or the conduit for both sides to be discussing with each other. So, for example, with Anssi's projects and his technology that he's come up with, it's a mixture, it's a hybrid between commercial activity underpinning everything with then the social impact and the charitable impact of removing the waste.
So do you think the foundation worldwide should be more focused on practical topics and
No, it's not for us to dictate what these guys do. Some prefer to have more educational stuff where you see the benefits and some intangible things in the future. It really depends. It's not for us to dictate. We are a practical organization. We are a boots on the ground company. We have services in several different countries. So for us, the natural consequence of our background means that we would be probably a little bit more practically focused than a think tank, for example.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of think tanks. I don't think the world needs someone else coming up with more ideas. We want to implement some of those ideas. That
I
exist.
find this quite interesting. I just realized that what you're offering as a CSR provider, as Finnish CSR provider, which means actually trustworthy, actually doing what they promise to do.
Absolutely.
That's almost an equivalent to the Swiss company SGS. I've heard of them running entire customs operations for developing countries because the corruption has been so horrible that no money comes to the coffin of the state.
Yeah.
So they've outsourced the entire customs office to SGS because then it is trustworthy. And it's like outsourcing CSR because you don't know what's going to happen in every country.
Exactly.
So why not outsource it to somebody whom you can trust?
Exactly. And it also has the ability to bring in either the expertise that they have in-house or be able to bring in the expertise from third parties. But the key factor is that they're trusted to execute on what they've said that they will execute.
Yeah, so just, find the right partners around you and then collaborate and. So you just more about the river recycle. Is it how old is the company? Is it?
The original thought for the technology I got at 2:30 in the morning on the first day of June 2018.
All right.
And I'm a serial entrepreneur.
Sharp.
Yep. I remember exactly because I then drew it and got the patenting process underway.
So it's kind of a startup, right?
Yeah, it's a startup. Yeah. It's a startup. But now that we joined with Lamor, I absolutely love this. We are a startup with 30 years of experience and operations in 104 countries. So that's pretty unique.
You call it a startup-ish.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that tells a lot. That
no, I mean, think of it this way: a startup recruits people who know how to work, what to do. So you recruit talent. So from my point of view, it's like I've recruited talent from Lamor, but I've also recruited an existing, capable, trustworthy implementation organization. So when I get the first proof of concept up and running, I can just say whoop, and it's known in 104 countries. And I also have the people who can actually implement it in 104 countries.
Yeah.
Think of me if I instead gave a substantial part to new employees, then they'll start recruiting people in all the countries necessary. It's gonna take years.
Yeah.
But this way around, once the concept has been proven, it can go global overnight.
Yeah. So you say it might take, if everything goes according to plan, 70 years to clean the rivers. But what are the the plans for the next year or 2 or 5 years for how do we get there? What are the short-term plans?
That's a secret we can't tell you.
Oh no.
Short-term plans. I'll start from a bit further away. Being a serial entrepreneur, I'm sure you've heard the saying, if your only tool is a hammer, then all problems look like nails.
Yeah.
So I'm a serial entrepreneur, so all problems look like business opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So the concept that we created is one where we can turn marine litter in the rivers into a profitable business. Because finding money from municipalities in developing countries enough to clean the rivers, which would be about $250 million a year, is a bit of a tough sell. Because they have other things to care about.
They have other priorities.
Yeah, they have other priorities, which I can kind of sort of understand. I mean, if people are dying of hunger, that could be of some importance.
Yeah, then again, it's for is it the
Yeah.
is the front yard, the backyard with the river?
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
the same discussion about what's easiest.
So the
way of
idea
doing
here
it.
is we developed a solution, a technological solution with which we can clean the rivers in a very efficient way using either no or very little external energy. Have the cleaners work 24/7, and then we collect the stuff, and we've figured out that we can actually turn it into pyrolysis oil, the plastics of it.
Oh, really?
And pyrolysis oil is basically, if you're not familiar with pyrolysis means that you put plastic into a container, take out all the oxygen, and heat it to 430 degrees.
All right.
It melts back to oil, and the oil that comes out is basically not heavy fuel oil, but light fuel oil.
Okay.
Very low sulfur, light fuel oil.
And you can do this now? It's not...
Yeah, well, our partner in this has been doing it for 18 years.
Oh, really?
And has been on commercial scale for quite a few years. So that part is tried, tested, can be done.
I'm sorry, but I personally prefer the idea of taking plastic and making it into bracelets, but he wants to turn it into oil, so
Yeah.
I guess as a business sale, that's a bit easier than...
I'm joking.
Yeah.
In case you didn't.
And of turning it to oil, the long-term vision is to actually turn it back to plastics, because from the plastics industry point of view, the pyrolysis oil is much better than crude oil, because all the sulfur has been taken out, the mercury has been taken out, because it was originally processed to be plastics. So when you turn it back to oil, it's extremely good raw material for plastics industry. So you're creating a full loop.
All right.
And finally, to use pyrolysis oil as raw material of plastics is cheaper than using crude.
Okay.
Because you need to process it less.
How much do you lose on the way, so to speak? If you melt down like 1,000 bottles, how many bottles can you make out of the oil that comes out?
Roughly speaking, you lose about 25%. If you take 20 tons of plastic, it turns into about 15 tons of oil.
Okay.
So that's how much you more or less lose in it. But then, fortunately, there is the wonderful situation that somebody has created a fairly large, intermediate storage facility, which means all the landfills of the world. Because plastic remains there for about 2 million years.
Yeah.
So all the plastic that ever went into the landfills is still there to be mined.
Yeah.
And that's, I can't remember what it is. We're producing at the moment about 360 million tons of plastic per year. But it's some gigatons that we produced all together during the history of the world.
So we can basically take all the old plastic and start making oil out of it.
Exactly, and turn it back to plastic.
Yeah. I mean, it's another form of recycling, effectively, to put it in a
it's called chemical recycling.
Yeah. And I think this is the prime example of what we as Lamor are trying to do from a foundation and CSR perspective, is not go to the plastics industry and point fingers, not go to the local communities and point fingers, is to say, here's a practical solution that cleans up the river systems. We help educate so we don't keep on getting the repeat pollution, but then it's also commercially viable, so we can attract outside investors, and we can also attract the industry to say, actually, this is a lot better for us to use that. So it's setting up something that is actually sustainable.
That's really good, because I agree that's the way of doing it. It's not just point fingers and say you're the bad one, or this is your fault. Or
you can't shame people into action. I don't think.
Yeah, me neither.
You can shame people into a reaction, but not to actual long-term actions.
And this is also the way that we can make this permanently sustainable, because when the collection and pyrolysis, i.e. the recycling, creates more money than it costs, then we don't need to go to the developing countries' municipalities and say, come on, pay it up. All we need to do is give us a river, give us a landfill, we'll clear it for you.
What else do you think there should be, the additional factors of, cleaning the rivers? What else we need to do than just take care of the plastics? Is there,
That's a very, very large subject.
Yeah, I guess it is.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking, when we talk about cleaning rivers, we're talking about clearing off the solid waste.
Yeah.
And mostly solid floating waste.
Yeah, yeah.
When you talk about or other kinds of waste and pollution going into the rivers, then it's really the question of getting into the sewage and water treatment, which you have you know something about that. I know nothing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think just to answer your question, I think if we just look at what we're talking about now and what we're focusing on now, I think, yes, the physical removal, but to make sure that that doesn't keep on happening. So I think to follow that up with that education programs, and then also the encouragement for private investment in these local municipalities to give the local residents an option not to throw it in the river.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this is just going to be going round in circles. So yes, it's very commercially viable, but we're still polluting.
And your foundation side is going to help with that, with the education and that side, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So how hard is it to find, investors on the foundation? How do you get the money, so to speak? It can't be easy.
No, it isn't. There's lots of drivers. There's lots of reasons why people want to do these things, and I think it's just about understanding, picking your target, and understanding what is their motivation. There are some organizations that just want to write a check to a reputable organization, and they trust you, and you go off and do it.
Yeah.
And there are some organizations, the individuals within organizations are a lot closer to the subject. But it isn't easy. There are several people, entities, organizations that are always asking for money. I think the unique thing is that if we come up with these types of solutions where it actually really makes sense, it's not just throwing money into the wind that temporarily makes people feel good about themselves. But this is something that will actually work for a long time.
Yeah, because I guess the one point is what is so hard is measure the value of your where the money is
of
going.
your contributions.
How do you?
Well, I think for us and the types of projects that we'll be going for is that you have tangible benefits. If you look at pick a river system, for example, you will be able to measure it very easily in a rudimentary sense with just using your eyeballs. So yesterday there was a lot more plastic than there was today.
It's a lot easier.
So I think for us, again, this is about the trustworthiness and really building off the fact that we're Finland. I think for us to set up look at foundation or to look at CSR projects and look at people's feelings and happiness scales and all this kind of stuff. I mean, how do you measure that? The projects that we will be going for and that we'll be supporting, I think, have very, very easy, visible, tangible effects. So I think that's probably the easiest way for us to really establish the credibility and show the people their return on their investment, so to speak. Of how easy it is to see their impact of these projects.
And for this, I think we're a perfect match because...
I thought so. I'm so happy you said that out. So.
the science of measuring how much plastic is going into the oceans every year is not exact. I mean, we looked at the river in Indonesia where the science, the models say it's 100 tons a year of plastic going into the ocean. However, the city of Jakarta collects 200 tons a day from that river. So nobody knows exactly how much is going in. But when we look at sort of our combination, if we set up a collector and start collecting, let's say, 7,000 or 50,000 tons of plastic per year, and then you start talking to the people saying, it's not a good idea to throw it in the river, just bring it over to our pyrolysis plant and we'll give you a little money for it. Then we can actually measure how much is being picked up. So you can see the real impact of putting 500,000 to a community engagement campaign. You'll see how much is actually
there's the value kind of. You can see what was really.
There's your impact.
Yeah,
you can measure your impact. Yeah.
I have a question about you said that river recycle is kind of a startup, even though well, it is a startup,
It is
but
a
then
startup, yeah.
it's just about the the investors side of finding investors for your startup. Well, you have now you're with Lamor and you're doing a lot bigger than. But before Lamor, how did you find investors, or is it hard? Is it easy? Well, I guess not easy, but
I find it an interesting sort of tightrope to walk for an entrepreneur. I mean, having sold the previous companies, I've been financing this myself until now, and I haven't been really looking for money. Now I am, because what I find is...
Do you have any money, by the way?
let me see.
yeah,
I guess I got 20.
yeah,
We'll
3
take
million would do. Yeah. So what I found is that we need to pay ourselves with our own equity or some other kind of financing for the first proofs of concept to show that the whole system actually works, because no development funder or any bank is willing to finance that kind of risk. But once it's up and running, we've identified $5.5 billion desperately looking for a place where they could put their money to save the ocean ecosystem.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
But it needs to be bankable.
Yeah.
And without this whole cycle, it's not bankable. There's no way to pay it back.
Yeah.
So you can't get the money. So once you have a bankable project, the money seems to be endless.
Yeah.
But what we do need,
Interesting,
sort of people who want to save the world,
Yeah.
because this is not sort of short-term quick cash.
Yeah.
'Cause,
Luckily, there are people that wants to save the world.
Yeah, and we don't need all that much
Yeah.
Wait
for
a
the
minute.
first.
We'll take it if someone's offering it, though.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, Well, we'll just be faster.
Yeah.
If somebody gives money, we'll be faster.
Yeah. I'm trying to do my part. I'm driving electric. Not
Right.
saying if that's better or worse, but I guess it's even a bit better than
Yeah.
using an oil car. How do you say it?
Yeah, especially a what do you call it? An SUV.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's not the best possible.
But great, thank you. Very interesting. The foundation, river recycle. There's a topic that we can go on and on talking, but I guess we went through a whole lot of it.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.